So what exactly are the Cincinnati Bearcats in for when they head to the Big 12 in less than 2 weeks? Well, let's head to Oklahoma to find out.
You are Locked On Bearcats, your daily podcast on the Cincinnati Bearcats, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thursday. Thanks so much for making Locked On Bearcats your first listen of every day. It's free and available wherever you listen to podcasts, including if you watch us right here on YouTube. If you're watching us on YouTube, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and follow us to get an alert every time that we drop a new episode. Today's episode of Locked On Bearcats is brought to you by Bird Dogs Clothing, my favorite brand of clothing. Why? Today's episode, of course, is brought to you by Bird Dogs. Go to birddogs.com/lockedoncollege, and they'll throw in a free custom Bird Dogs Yeti-style tumbler with every order. I'll tell you why Bird Dogs is my favorite brand of clothing in just a minute, but today I am privileged to be joined by a longtime journalist, sports columnist at the Oklahoman in Oklahoma. He covers the Oklahoma Sooners, the Oklahoma State Cowboys. He covers the Oklahoma City Thunder, and he recently penned a 3-part series on the Cincinnati Bearcats and the University of Cincinnati as they get set for their Big 12 move. What is Thursday? It's Thursday, June 22nd. We're 9 days away from the Big 12 debut of the Cincinnati Bearcats, and we are joined today by Berry Tramel of the Oklahoman, a longtime sports columnist there. Of course, you can also hear him on the Sports Animal Radio Network Monday through Friday on FM 98.1 out in Oklahoma. Berry, it is great to have you on. Your work is extensive. Your work is tremendous. I want to commend you on the 3-part series you did on the University of Cincinnati. I thought it was tremendous, especially that first piece when my favorite line from that piece, Nippert Stadium is college football's Wrigley Field. Why did you say that?
Well, I mean, I wasn't the first to say it. Others have said it, but I'd heard about Nippert, for really decades. I came to the OU Cincinnati game in 2010, I think it was, and they played that game at what was then Paul Brown Stadium, and I regretted that they didn't schedule the game at Nippert. I always wanted to go to a game at Nippert, and I was not disappointed. I went out to Cincinnati the 1st of April, spent 2 days with various UC officials and coaches and whatnot, and really got to know people and got to know the place. And I was just stunned at Nippert. It's unlike anything we've got in the Big 12. It may be unlike almost any place in America in terms of its urban setting. It's like Wrigley Field, and that Wrigley's just sort of, jammed into a Chicago neighborhood. And the, Nippert is just sort of jammed in the middle of campus with, I don't know the exact yardage, but, 20 yards from the student center, 20 yards from the fitness and wellness center, and 20 yards from the athletic headquarters. And, we got more space than that in most of Big 12 countries. So the urban setting of Nippert and the entire athletic facilities was really intriguing. And the idea of a college football Saturday at Cincinnati, I think, is going to be really appealing to anybody that is fortunate enough to go watch a UC game against Iowa State or Texas Tech or Oklahoma State or Baylor or whoever happens to be coming into Cincinnati.
As someone who has experienced several game day Saturdays at Nippert Stadium, I can tell you it is an unbelievable atmosphere, from the tailgates to the catwalk to pregame to the marching band to everything leading up to the game, and then the incredible atmosphere that you will experience while attending a game at Nippert Stadium, or whether you cover a game, Berry, which are you going to be at the Oklahoma-Cincinnati game that is on September 23rd of this year?
Yeah, I am coming. I got my plane ticket. I got my hotel reservations. I don't think I have a car yet, but that'll come soon enough. So,
okay. Are you staying downtown or on campus?
I'm actually staying at the airport. When I came to campus in April, I stayed at the top of the hill, at the Fairfield Inn on top of the hill, just off Calhoun. I think it was on Market Street, and love to stay there. But little bit of a price increase, so doesn't really fit the newspaper budget. So I'll be at the airport, make for an easy getaway on Sunday. But yeah, I'd like to experience as much of the Friday night, Friday atmosphere the day before, and then of course that morning and afternoon. I don't know what time we'll kick off, but yeah, I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Hey, listen. That Friday night, okay, see, the city of Cincinnati right now has the hottest Major League Baseball team with 11 straight wins in the Cincinnati Reds. And if I'm not mistaken, Johnny Bench lives in Oklahoma.
Well, he hadn't lived here in a long time. He hadn't lived here since about 1964. But he's from Oklahoma.
He's from Oklahoma. That's right. He's from Oklahoma. That's right.
Yeah, I saw Johnny about a month ago. He was in Oklahoma for an event, and we had a good chat. I've known him over the years.
Wow.
And yeah, he's a Cincinnati icon. I actually, Zach Stipe from UC took me to opening day. I was there on opening day for the Reds this year, and sat by a woman and a man from north of Cincinnati somewhere. But we had a good chat about Johnny and the old Reds. They were longtime fans. So yeah, a lot of Cincinnati fans in Oklahoma because of Johnny Bench.
So a lot of Reds fans in Oklahoma. This is great. This is great. And what I was going to say to you is, you come in that weekend for the Oklahoma game. That Friday, the Reds play the Pirates at Great American Ballpark. Could that game be a division clinching game? You never know. Now, Barry, I want to. You say you've been to the Oklahoma. You went to the Oklahoma Cincinnati game in 2010. I was going to ask you if you had been to Cincinnati, the campus and Nippert Stadium, prior to when you were here in April for this 3-part series that you did, but I gather that you have been. So I want to ask you, what was your impression of the campus, Nippert Stadium, Fifth Third Arena as they get ready for this momentous day on July 1st?
Well, I had not been to campus until a couple of months ago.
Okay.
I was very impressed. Cincinnati's athletic facilities are not where they want them to be, but they've done great work in investing. The renovation of Nippert has made it clearly, a solid Big 12 stadium. I know that the university officials could use more premium seating, suites, lounges, those kinds of things. That's true of virtually everybody, whether you're Alabama or UAB. But I also think the renovations to the arena on the basketball side are fantastic. Cincinnati basketball will be Big 12 ready. And then of course, the project that just has been had the groundbreaking for the new indoor training facility and football headquarters. That's going to be a premium situation. So, Cincinnati's got most of the big blocks either finished or underway. Some of the other things they're going to need facility upgrades in some of the other sports to keep the pace in the Big 12. But one reason that UC is in the Big 12 is because it's made the commitment. It didn't say, "Hey, let us in the league and we'll show you what we can do." Cincinnati showed what it could do without Power 5 money, with the renovations, with the success on the field. So that's what got Cincinnati into this conference in the first place. So I think Cincinnati's in good shape. There's lots of things that need to happen. Still a lot of improvements that need to be made, but I think UC has shown that they're going to be able to do it because they've done it without the prestige and finances of this kind of platform. And once they have that platform, I think the program will just continue to get better.
I really like so you wrote 3 pieces, and one of them was, and you really touched on 2 of them there, but one of them was you wrote about how they're going to enter the Big 12, the Bearcats, without Luke Fickell. And obviously what he did for the program was immaculate. But you point out the fact that they have achieved a high level of success without that Power 5 prestige, without the resources that you see at so many big-time schools like in Oklahoma or at Texas. And the fact that over the last 26 years, they've been to 19 bowl games, 14 in the last 17 years alone. And you also point out, Barry, the fact that they have poured in, $300 million into, no, not $300 million. Well, they poured in 87 to Fifth Third for those renovations. And then you had the Nippert renovations a few years prior. So the amount of money that they have poured into the renovations at their two main venues and anything about the football facility, it really is amazing. And then above all that, because for so long, it was, well, can a group of five team even have a shot at making the college football playoff? And then the Bearcats crashed those gates, and they did it triumphantly. So that's what's so amazing. And now you're going to get to the Power Five. And one thing I think about, Barry, and I want your opinion on this, is the margin for error is not going to be as razor thin as it has been for the last however many years. Do you agree with that sentiment?
Oh, yeah. And that's part of the problem with both basketball and football, and really most of the sports in the NCAA, is they give the Power Five members a lot of get out of jail free cards. The mid majors, not so many. And in football, Fickle's team had to do two things to have, or any mid major had to do two things to make the playoff. They had to go unbeaten, and they had to have a signature non-conference victory. Cincinnati doesn't get in if Notre Dame doesn't happen to be on the schedule that year. A very good Notre Dame team, and the Bearcats whacked them. And even then, there's a lot of talk. Oklahoma State played Baylor that year in the Big 12 title game. OSU, I think, was 5th in the rankings, and UC was 4th, and Baylor was 8th or 9th, whatever they were, and it went down to the wire, and Baylor stopped OSU on the goal line on the last play of the game. A lot of people think Oklahoma State would have jumped Cincinnati. I tend to think not, but a lot of people disagree with me. But that just shows you you use the term razor thin. I think that's accurate.
Barry, I'm going to go ahead. Sorry.
I was going to say, it's very difficult for a mid-major to do that. In the Big 12, it's still not going to be easy, but you do have a margin for error.
So I'm going to share a true story with you. So I remember that day vividly. I was working for ABC that day for the American Championship game, which was right after the Big 12 Championship game. Both games were on ABC. And I'm watching Baylor and Oklahoma State on my phone on the ESPN app on the field. And I see Oklahoma State get stopped just short. And I say to myself, that might be the difference between not being in the playoff and being in the playoff. And even though the Bearcats, I don't know if they were essentially a lock before the game kicked off against Houston, if they won, of course, to get into the playoff. But I just think about how close that was in my recollection from that day. And now the Bearcats are a part of this Power Five, the big boys, the prestige, as you say. But I want to ask you where or what you see the Bearcats doing in their first year in the Big 12 and what exactly we're in for as far as competition, atmospheres, and what have you. We'll do that after I explain to you how this episode of Locked On Bearcats is brought to you by Bird Dogs. So, Bird Dogs makes you look good. Why? Because Bird Dogs stretch khaki shorts are designed to fit slimmer through the thigh and leg, giving you a truly sculpted look. Bird Dog shorts does the exact same thing as Lululemon, but they fit way better. They fit way better than regular shorts that are made of a stiff, restricting cotton. The Bird Dogs fixed this issue by inventing cloud knit fabric that looks just like khaki, but stretches so you get a way slimmer fit without having to sacrifice movement. Bird Dogs uses anti-stink, sweat-wicking fabric that keeps you cool and dry all day long. Go to birddogs.com/lockedoncollege for a free Yeti-style tumbler with your order. That's birddogs.com/lockedoncollege for a free Yeti-style tumbler. You won't want to take your Bird Dogs off. We promise you. They can even work better, or they can even work well when you're going for a run or lifting. That's how great they are. Bird Dogs clothing. Thank you so much for making Locked On Bearcats your first listen of every day. For your second listen today, or rather, I should tell you, don't miss Locked On NBA Draft Live tonight. pick-by-pick analysis from our stable of local NBA hosts, national reaction from our NBA Big Board hosts, and live check-ins from inside the NBA Draft. Locked On NBA Draft Live starts at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time on the Locked On NBA YouTube page. Berry Tramel of the Oklahoman joining me today here on Locked On Bearcats. Berry, you covered the Big 12. You've been around it for a long time. I mean, you go back to do you go back to the Big 8 prior to the Big 12's formation in the late 90s?
Oh yeah, I grew up in Oklahoma, so I know all about the Big 8, but I covered a ton of Big 8 football.
Okay, so what are the Bearcats going to be in for their first season in the Big 12? Like, what can fans expect the Bearcats to be in for?
Well, it's several things. One is, UC's getting 1 year of Oklahoma and Texas in the league. Oklahoma and Texas are the name brands of the Big 12. They're the ones that sort of ran the conference. They're the ones that should have dominated the conference. Oklahoma has, Texas has not. But UCA's catching them when they're both down. Texas has been down for about 13 years. Oklahoma's been down for 1 year and hasn't won the league in 2 years. So you're catching Big 12 football in a time of parity. In the last 3 years, 6 schools have been in the Big 12 title game. So lots of parity, lots of unknown on who's going to win each Saturday and those kinds of things. So it appears to me that we haven't burst out of that. I don't see an elite team. So it's sort of a wide open league. TCU came from nowhere to make the college football championship game last year. Kansas State won the Big 12 championship game. OSU Baylor played the year before that in the title game. Iowa State and Oklahoma played the year before that. So, lots of parity. And then plus you got the newcomers. Besides UC, you got UCF and Brigham Young and Houston, and everybody's going through an adjustment period. You got 4 coming in, 2 going out, and it's sort of a big unknown. I will say this, just from an outsider looking in, it looks like bad timing for the Bearcats. Cincinnati's had this great run the last few years under Luke Fickell, tremendous talent, all those NFL draft picks, lots of success. But the problem you've got is the coaching change with Fickell going to Wisconsin, a changing of the guard, the transfer portal hurt Cincinnati extensively. Scott Satterfield himself said, you know what, we're pretty good in the interior, but we need some playmakers. And, it's going to take him a little bit to get the program up and going in the way he does. So it's not great timing. If Luke Fickell was still here, I'd be bullish on the Bearcats. But I think it's going to be a little bit of a rough go for Cincinnati, not so much because they're in the Big 12, but because they've lost their coach.
Interesting. But you mentioned TCU, and last year they were under a first-year head coach in Sonny Dykes. So there is optimism there. I mean, TCU not only played in the Big 12 title game, but they won the Fiesta Bowl over Michigan. They played in the national championship. Well, that's another story. But I look at what they did last year, Barry, and I think that provides some optimism for Scott Satterfield going into his first season at Cincinnati.
Yeah, the difference is I think Gary Patterson, he didn't leave and take a bunch of guys with him. So TCU, TCU wasn't whacked in the portal the way Cincinnati was. TCU was blessed with a veteran quarterback returning, Max Dugan, who had been a good playmaker, but not a star, and then developed into a star. And maybe the same thing, Emory Jones certainly has been a ballyhooed player for quite a while. Maybe he can have the same kind of late career success that Dugan had. I just think there's some, the transition from Sonny Dykes from SMU to TCU was relatively small, just across town, really. So I think it's not a big cultural change at TCU that happened. I think it is at Cincinnati. But I think it'd be great if we did see it. I'm just not optimistic, particularly in the first year. TCU had a great thing going when they came into the Big 12. They had to struggle a little bit, get adjusted to the conference. It only took them about a year. West Virginia was coming off an Orange Bowl victory over Clemson when they joined the Big 12. Took them a while. Some would say they never have really adjusted. So I think the adjustment is going to be a situation for the Bearcats. But again, the parity that we talked about certainly presents an opportunity for UC to be effective and win some games and see how they come out against the Big 12.
What does success look like for the Bearcats in year one to you?
I would say 7 wins, a 7-5 season. I try not to say bowl game because about anybody can make a bowl game, even at 6-6. I had the Houston athletic director say, I just want to make a bowl game because they got some of the same issues. They got the adjustment they've got to go through. He has no illusions that they're going to come in and start kicking butt in the Big 12. He said, I just want to make a bowl game. I think Cincinnati might be a little bit ahead of that because of their previous success, but it's not going to be easy. If Cincinnati can get to 7 wins, the Pitt game I think is going to be big. You want to sweep your non-conference. So that Cincinnati Pitt game I think will be a big one. Pitt's a solid program, but certainly beatable. So I would hope if the Bearcats can beat Pitt, 7 wins seems like a good solid year to me.
Fair enough. All right. So we've talked about what success will look like. Now I want to get your impressions on Nippert Stadium and Fifth Third Arena from when you visited there and how they rival against Big 12 atmospheres currently. We'll do that next here on Locked On Bearcats. Berry Tramel of the Oklahoman at Berry Tramel on Twitter joining me today here on Locked On Bearcats. Barry, when you came to campus and you visited Nippert Stadium, you visited Fifth Third, what do you, as far as where they stand, where they're going to stand in Big 12 atmospheres, where do you put them?
Yeah, I have not experienced it. When people think about going to Ames, Iowa, or Manhattan, Kansas, or Stillwater, Oklahoma, they don't really consider the atmosphere until they experience it. I would say the best Big 12 atmosphere is in Manhattan, Kansas, with Kansas State. I mean, it's a great atmosphere. It's not manufactured. It was people who, by the bootstraps, picked themselves up and said, we're going to have a great atmosphere. So it doesn't have to be the 80,000 seat stadium. Nippert's going to be the smallest stadium in the Big 12, but the arenas, at Baylor and TCU are less than 50,000. The stadiums at Iowa State and Oklahoma State and Kansas State are, Kansas State's about 50, Oklahoma State's about 55, Iowa State's about 58,000. So these aren't huge places, but they do a great job with it. I can imagine that Nippert will be fantastic. It'll be full, I would assume, for every Big 12 game. The layout is just tremendous. It's, it's not just, we often think of football stadiums as being a bowl, but Nippert is in a bowl with the hill on one end and the buildings on the other. And it just it's in its own little cocoon. I was completely charmed by the architecture and also the makeup to where, there's not even gates at the stadium. They have to put up, portable barriers to create places for fans to enter on game day. Otherwise it's just a place, it's like a city park almost. And most stadiums in the Big 12, I assume all of them, I'd have to make sure of that, but that's not the way they're all, sort of fortress stadiums that you can't easily or ever walk through. So that's going to be a unique thing. I think the view from up at the top of the hill, I walked down both mornings. I just walked down that staircase from Calhoun Street down to whatever that street was, and then past the soccer field. And the conservatory and just a bunch of unique scenes and buildings, and get into the middle of the campus, the athletic campus, was just really cool. So I think it's going to be a great and unique setting. I assume Cincinnati fans will respond by creating a great atmosphere. They're going to have the best home schedule they've ever played. That's the best thing about conference realignment for a school like Cincinnati is, you had some really good competition in the American, but you also had some teams that don't incite excitement. You have some teams that don't travel well. You have some teams that really don't bring much juice on their own. But in the, when you're playing the Big 12 schedule, that won't be the case. Oklahoma will be there in September, and I can promise you there's going to be tons of Sooner fans there, thousands and thousands. And they will be flooding the secondary market on tickets to get into Nippert. So it's going to be cool for Sooners and their fans to experience the urban setting, but I think it's also going to be cool for Cincinnati to experience a school like Oklahoma coming into the league, and eventually, when whoever else gets there, I forget who UC's hosting this year, but whether it's Baylor or Kansas State or TCU or even somebody like Brigham Young, a newcomer. I mean, these are big brands that can really impact the atmosphere just with their presence.
Yeah, and I love how you described your walk from your hotel, which I've stayed at, to campus, which I've made that walk many times. Did you get a chance when you were here to try Skyline Chili? We
did go to lunch at Skyline Chili. I had it 13 years ago. I had it in 20. I very much enjoyed it.
Okay.
It's not exactly my favorite. One problem I have is the older I get, the less chili agrees with me. I still eat it some. My wife likes to make it, so I eat it. But and I thought of my son-in-law who loves to do funky things with spaghetti. So the idea of chili on spaghetti is not foreign to me. But I just thought it was cool, the iconic brand of Skyline. We ate at the one very close to campus on the corner. It's a corner diner set up, and I thought it was a fun place to go. So yeah, I enjoyed like I said, went to the Reds. Really enjoyed a lot of the traditions of the city of Cincinnati and the university.
Did you get Grater's ice cream, La Rosa's pizza, or Montgomery Inn?
Okay, which kind of pizza?
La Rosa's.
I think I stopped and got a pizza. Is that the one that's in the ballpark also?
Yes.
Okay, I did. I stopped and got myself on the way out of town. I went back to Indianapolis to a Thunder game on my way out, and I stopped and got me a pizza at La Rosa's. Very much enjoyed it.
There you go. Well, look at you, already liking the Cincinnati scene, Cincinnati food scene. Final question for you, Barry. What are your impressions, or what are your opinions on Scott Satterfield and Wes Miller as head coaches?
I didn't get to meet with Wes Miller. He was out of town. We spoke on the phone after he returned, and I was back in Oklahoma. Very popular on campus. Everybody raves about his enthusiasm. Certainly has a good track record. Cincinnati basketball is a name brand. It's a tradition. It's an iconic program. So I think it'll do well in the Big 12. Big 12 basketball is very tough, incredibly tough, much tougher than the football version. But I think Cincinnati can stand up to it. Great facilities, great tradition, great recruiting base. So I think Cincinnati's going to be fine. I think Wes Miller will do a good job. Scott Satterfield is interesting because he comes into a tough situation, replacing Luke Fickell, who did so much for the program. Never easy to replace a name like that. The one thing I do think is, for whatever reason, and it's different people, different generations, whoever's in charge of Cincinnati football almost always makes a good hire. I guess in the last 5 football coaches, they regret one of those hires, probably, I would say, Tommy Tuberville. which seemed like an odd fit to me when they hired him, 8 years ago. But you go back to Mark D'Antonio, you go to certainly Butch Jones, in between Brian Kelly. People at Cincinnati recognize good coaches and seem to hire guys that do well. Satterfield, certainly has the coaching chops to succeed. Did a great job at Appalachian State. His resume at Louisville was not fantastic. He did take over a mess, though. Bobby Petrino, as usual, left things in a total mess. So I know that Cincinnati, that Satterfield wasn't necessarily a home run hire in the eyes of the general public, but I think he's got the resume and the experience to do well. I think it's good that he is coming from a Louisville, a Power 5 program, as he enters a Power 5 league, because the adjustment can be, he knows what offensive linemen need to look like in a Power 5 league. He knows what kind of speed it takes, what kind of defensive back you need, those kinds of things. He's not going to have to adjust to the talent level. He knows what the talent level needs to be, and so I think that'll help. So I'm reasonably optimistic that he can do well. But like I said, I think it's just bad timing that for Cincinnati to go into this kind of transition at the same time they're transitioning away from an iconic coach like Luke Fickell. Just bad timing.
Yeah, I totally agree. Berry Tramel of the Oklahoman, and he also does some sports talk on the side. The Sports Animal. I just had it and I lost it. The what's it called, Barry? The Sports Animal.
The Sports Animal in Oklahoma City. 98.1 FM in Oklahoma City.
How about that? At Berry Tramel on Twitter. We will see you, Barry, September 23rd. I'm looking forward to meeting you and looking forward to what should be hopefully a nip at night game and a good Big 12 battle between two teams who have some history between each other. They played in 2010. They played in 2008. So looking forward to seeing that matchup again. And I'm on Twitter, of course, at Frankie_Natty with 2 N's, NNATI. Instagram, AlexFrankNet_. Email, alex3frank@gmail.com. I'm off until Tuesday, back at it next week. So much to get to. As always, Big 12 Media Days upon us. It's Big 12. I don't know if it's Big 12 week, but looking forward to that. And thank you again, Berry Tramel, for coming on today's show of Locked On Bearcats, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.